All right, welcome into Content is for Closers, where each episode we talk with an entrepreneur, marketer, or business owner about how they literally use content to close more business, drive more sales, and grow their company. I'm your host, Adam Vasquez, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this first episode of the show alongside my co-host, Carlton Riffle. Carlton, what's going on?
Hello. It's good to be here.
How good is it? Are you excited? I mean,
it's
give
so
us some
good.
energy.
My day was kind of going so, but now that I'm co-hosting a podcast right now, I'm extra excited.
Good. That's what we like to hear. Carlton is going to be with us each and every single episode. We'll also have some one-off episodes where we just talk about whether it be news or tactics or trends that we are paying attention to. And usually we will be joined by a guest who is using content to grow their business or content is their business in some way. But today, Carlton, I know we're going to talk about messaging. What do you have for us on the slate for this episode?
I thought just to kind of break the ice a little bit, we could, the audience wants to know a little bit more about you, Adam. So I could ask you, icebreaker question and ease us into this episode. So here's my question for you. Out of all of the content that you've ever created, what would be one of your most favorite pieces of content or the most favorite piece of content you've ever created?
This is an easy question for two reasons. Number one, I'm pretty sure I wrote it. Number two, because
false.
The
fake news already.
What'd you say?
Fake news already.
Starting on the right foot. The first thing that comes to my mind, I just tweeted about it earlier this week, is a commercial that I got the chance to be a part of and write for a company called Stainmaster. It was it looked like it was a trailer for an upcoming horror film in which basically a stain takes over, a stain haunts a family. And so you need Stainmaster.
I'm scared just hearing it.
Yeah, you're a homeowner. You know how that'd be. It was just really fun. The client let us have a lot of fun with it. They were not overly product concerned, which I'm sure we'll talk about some over this series. They really tapped into what their audience likes. Turns out homemakers, moms, all their core customer loves horror films, and people bought it. Like, they thought all of the comments were like, yo, at Carlton, we're going to see this when this comes out. Like, I can't wait for this to get out here. So people really thought it was a real movie, and it was just a fun piece of content to be a part of. What about you?
My favorite piece of content was not that commercial of a success. It was actually kind of a failure, but it was still fun to create. And my wife and I are building a home, or have built a home. So we decided we'd start a YouTube channel and try to get an audience. And it turns out that if you actually are trying to build a home at the same time that you're trying to record videos, it gets really tricky. But the trailer was great. And that's all that matters, is having a good trailer. So that was fun. Got a lot of views. But after things started getting hard on the building side, we had to let go a little bit.
So why did you say that was a failure, though? Just because you didn't?
Well, because I just left everyone hanging.
Okay.
Most people that know us, and when they see us, they're like, "Hey, what happened?
Yeah.
I thought you were building a house. Like, why'd you stop?" Like, are you still just living outside with no house, with just a foundation? No.
By the way, great trailer for the series. If you want to see Carlton living outside while building a house, you should. What was it called?
Yeah.
Carlton?
Small Home, Big Plans.
I feel like that's a good note, for something I tweeted today was and I believe this, in my experience and in our experience doing this, you can have content fail over the course of a week or a month or a short period of time, let's say. But I don't think you can have it definitively be successful until a minimum of like 18 months or maybe even
ongoing.
Yeah, because you have to be able to do it, and you have to be able to do it well, and you have to do it well for a long period of time in order to get some of that compounding result. So anyway, good.
It's been 18 months since our last piece of content, probably, but we haven't done the continuing part.
Yeah,
it's minor details. We're going to jump into why are we making this show. I think a lot of people see podcasts popping up left and right, and so. There's another podcast coming out, and people want to understand why is it we're making it, especially about content, because it's a little bit meta. We're talking on a podcast about content. So kind of tell us, Adam, from your perspective, what is it that this show will mean to you? Why are we making this show?
I think it's a fair question. And if you're listening to this, you probably have, especially episode 1, you probably have some connection to us, to me, to Carlton, to Derek, to something we've done in the past, or someone on the team. And so first of all, we really appreciate you listening. But I think if you know a little bit of our brand story, when Derek and I first partnered together, we used a podcast to try to get the word out. It was successful in the sense that it got a lot of attention, and it helped us start conversations that we probably didn't have business, having at the time. But it was, we didn't know what we were doing. Like there was very little forethought. It was, the intention was not there in terms of lining up to our objectives and all these sorts of things. And so we just saw firsthand as business owners, okay, there's something powerful here because the vehicle of content worked, right? Like we got a lot of attention. It did just factually help us grow our business, but we left a lot of meat on the bone by not really doing it the correct way. And in talking with business owners over the past 4 or 5 years, a lot of business owners, a lot of marketers understand that content and digital content and stuff happening on the internet is where their customers are spending time and where the future of their business lies. But they don't necessarily know how to go about, practically speaking, building an audience or tapping into their existing audience through effective content, telling a story, doing it well, and doing it in such a way that it brings real revenue. At the end of the day, like we're all businesses. That's what we're here for. So that's what we hope to do with this show, is to have conversations who are doing that well, as well as, just offering some advice and education as we've now done this for 4.5 years. Our customers have made tens of millions of dollars on the back of the work that we've done. And we want to extend that out to the audience that's listening.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the other side of it is people see content and think that because they see content everywhere that they need to just start creating something. And while it's good to be creating and be publishing content, it really helps a ton to have a framework behind what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it. So some people will start a little bit further down the road and they're already into just, looking at other people's content and just kind of mimicking it. But if you really have a good, solid framework for the content that you're creating, and it's coming from a little bit more of a clear understanding of why content helps and how it can help, then it will do a ton more for your business than just, fill your time creating videos and content. So just kind of running through that framework real quick. And this is a framework that we'll go through in these first 6 episodes. And we're going to have guests that kind of speak to each one of these things. But really just to give you an overview, it starts with establishing messaging. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then from that, you really have to have your team aligned. So aligning the team around that messaging and around that purpose. And then after that, starting to build a community. And once you have that community through, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, but it's really just starting by creating content. So that's when the content comes in, and that's when you can start getting in front of people and closing deals, and finally always be closing. So that's and kind of perpetuating the cycle of this process.
Yeah, and just I would say, just to add to that last one, it's not just about creating indefinitely, but also creating a culture where your team or the people around you, in addition to you as the marketing lead or the owner or whatever, are equipped to be a part of that conversation as well.
Absolutely. So kind of take us a little bit deeper into that first point, Adam. When it comes to your messaging and your scripting, how is it that you should start when you're looking at this framework for creating content?
The idea here is the script that your brand is going to tell on an ongoing basis, right? Not just in one piece of content, but what is the overall story arc? What is the overall brand story you want to communicate? And the reason we call it a script is because several of us had very bad first jobs. I was talking to Derek about this, Carlton. Derek's my partner at Herd, and I forgot his first job was also doing really bad cold. Yeah, so there's like three of us.
So I'm the odd one out. I just didn't have.
Yeah, you didn't, but
amazing...
I don't think. I think some of the other team also did not have to go through the drudgery of this. But for those of you who haven't, if you're in a cold call sales environment, which I was right out of school, you're given a script, you're given a call list and a phone, and they're like, all right, make 100 calls. and this is an insane way to go about prospecting and business development, but people still do this. And the script that you're given is sort of the framework, the core messaging that you're supposed to use in order to try to get someone to listen to you. Well, while that entire method is backwards and doesn't work, the idea of having a script that everyone acknowledges and is aligned to in the way that they talk about your company is very, very important. And so when we talk about defining this and establishing this messaging, the first thing is that you need to acknowledge what the customer's problem is, right? A lot of times when you get a phone call, a sales phone call, or you interact with a piece of content, the first thing that you're told is some great thing about the vendor or the creator or the salesperson that's trying to get you to hook into whatever they're selling you, right? But the best content, the best storytelling, forget about sales content or digital content or anything like that, places you as the consumer at the center of whatever it is that's being created, right? So there's lots of different people who talk about this. Donald Miller talks about it in his story brand. There's a guy named Paul Howell who has the and, but, therefore method. And all of these are built around, making your consumer the hero and identifying their problem right up front. So when you're trying to establish that messaging matrix, number one, acknowledge the customer's problem. And this could be as simple as, if you're a landscaping company, don't try to come to the piece of content with the temptation is going to be, we do landscaping. Like, we got to say we do landscaping. And, that's going to be tough to overcome. But instead of doing that, think about what your customer actually cares about, right? They care about their neighbor looking at their lawn and thinking that it looks brown. They care about the money they're going to have to spend in order to fix that. Like, these are the things that they actually care about. So acknowledge the problem, step one. Step two is to identify potential outcomes, positive or negative, right? So in Paul Howell, I just mentioned his method, you have the customer has a problem and they want a solution. Therefore, there are two things that they're confronted with now. They can either continue the way they've been going and they kind of know what that path looks like, or they can try this alternate solution and experience the benefit or negative of that. And so you want to give them a little bit of a foretaste. Like, if you continue in what you're doing, you're going to end up here. And here is not a great place. Or you can come work with us and end up with this outcome that you actually want. Whether you know it or not, this is the outcome that you actually want. So you acknowledge the problem, you give them two potential outcomes that are going to happen because this problem exists, and then you lay out the solution. So listen, Carlton, your yard, it sucks. And the fact is, either it's going to...
Part of it.
What's
does.
that? Part of it. All of mine does. So I could say this to myself, but either you're going to continue the way that you are, you're going to be miserable, embarrassed, out of money, whatever, on all this lawn stuff, or you're going to be like our coworker Derek and have Phil Mickelson's, lush zoysia growing in your backyard, right? Those are the two.
He's just rolling around in it.
Those are the two options
right now. That's why he's not.
That's why he's not here.
He's just rolling around
in it and mowing it. So those are the two options. And here's the solution. If you want fill grass, then the way that you need to do that is by whatever your call to action is. Subscribing to our newsletter, joining our Facebook community, hiring us, but that's a little bit forward. Giving them some way.
And making it simple, simple steps to get there. I think a lot of times when people think about the solution, they got to think, well, I'm going to make this huge thing that I'm going to go through this huge pitch deck with them and show them every single point. But really, the solution has got to be simple. It's got to be easy for them to say yes, because they see how good it could be if they go with with what you're doing. So Adam, when you're talking about messaging and specifically content, how does that correlate with um, the showing people the solution and showing people their problem?
Well, I think it's just where attention is currently. When we talk about content, we're talking about digital internet, enabled content. So figuring out a way, and I think something you just said that was important is it has to be simple, right? Like your call to action has to be simple, and we're making it complex, giving you this framework saying you need to acknowledge the problem, identify the outcomes, lay out the solution, and tell them why you can give them that solution. But if you do all of that groundwork, the actual execution should be pretty simple. It should be pretty straightforward. And so that could be a very short TikTok, where you're showing someone coming out, seeing their lawn, pouring magic pixie dust that has your brand on it, and bam, their lawn is better. That's a horrible example, but you get what I'm saying. It doesn't need to be an overly complex solution. Is that what you're asking? How content works with it?
Yeah, because I think it's easy to think about how how we always as businesses need to be thinking about our customers' solution and helping them solve their problem. But when it comes to creating content that's around that, it gets a little bit more complicated. And I think people are confused. Is it that every single video that I make is trying to present the solution, or is it really just addressing problems and being helpful and giving value inside that lane of what their problem is, and that will eventually lead them to this solution?
It's definitely the second. And even when Carlton went through that initial framework of establishing messaging, align your team, build your community, start creating, close the deal, like that's number 5, right? For an intentional reason. So when you're thinking about messaging, and I even just did it in saying like, go make this video, you don't want to jump to execution. You want to be able to talk about your messaging. You want to be able to talk about that core problem and your solution from a higher level that is evergreen in nature, so that whether it's a video, whether it's an email newsletter down the road, whatever the execution ends up being, you're speaking consistently from a brand perspective.
Okay, so we have several clients that have podcasts and that we're assisting in that production of their content. And specifically, when it comes to messaging and creating messaging that engages people and helps them solve a problem. Thinking of all of our clients, Adam, can you think of one that there's a specific example or way that they've done it that's a good example for everyone else listening?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of them, but one that comes to mind because their head of growth is coming on for next week's episode is RudderStack. So Eric Dodds is going to be joining us in episode 2, and I think what they've done incredibly effectively is created, their show is called the Data Stack Show, I believe, and they've created an entire show and community that's built around not their brand even, and not their solution for sure, but around their customer base and the different they're a very technical problem solution. So the different problems that these people are facing, they've built an entire community in addressing and having conversations around them. And so we'll hear more about that next week from Eric directly.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up question too is when you were selling something for your first job, do you remember what your sales script was? Do you remember what it was that you're selling?
I don't. I think I've just blocked that part of my mind out. But what I do remember is the overall core values that we were selling, like the problem of, it was at a hiring agency, a temp agency. So like if I had to, I could probably pitch you right now on why you should hire me to help you with your temp services. But that goes to our whole point, right? Like they did, for all the flack I give them for the sales method, they did have a clear message and a story that I know parts of today to be able to tell you, why they can solve their customer problems.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time that I created a flyer for a lawn mowing business. It was kind of my first attempt at graphic design in Paint, and just thinking back to it all the way as a kid, I was thinking about me. I was thinking about what we offered. So I was like listing our services. It was like, I'm sure there was clip art involved. I'm sure there was word art involved, all the cool things. And then as much as I hate talking to people, I just couldn't bring myself to just knocking on doors. So I just stuck it in their mailboxes, like for blocks on blocks,
Just committing
putting in the
federal crime
mailbox.
after federal crime.
Yeah, federal crime after federal crime. And then some guy calls my parents and he's like, hey, you can't be doing that. And so my mom is like 4 blocks down, just taking out every single one, like all the way down the row.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I just
how did it go?
For that specific time period, it went all right. I think with, especially when you're, in high school, the value proposition is a little bit different because it's really just a commodity. You're competing on price, and because we were cheap, and because we were 2 nice boys mowing people's lawns, we were able to get a lot of word of mouth.
I don't know. I think it's the word art.
It all worked out.
I think it was the word art.
It was the word art
that really stuck with people. So next week we're going to talk a little bit more about. We'll probably touch on establishing messaging, but really aligning your team around that message and empowering them to be able to communicate it on your behalf. But each week, I think as well, Carlton, we're going to talk about some things that could be new, could be helpful to our listeners. And I think we're calling this segment "Have You Heard?" Is that right?
Yeah, have you heard?
Which, if you don't connect that, our company's name is Heard. But we're not putting Purd, and we can't do that. Don't sue us. But, so Carlton, this week, what have you heard about that might help the audience?
Yeah, so one of the tools that I love, we use in our business, we've been using it for the last year and a half, is ClickUp. And it's you probably heard about it before, but it's a competitor to all your other to-do apps out there like Basecamp or Asana, or the Kanban style to-do list. So it's neat because it allows you to take whatever lists you have, to-do lists you have, and break it up into any view that you want, either for yourself or your team. But really the power of it is that they give you automations, and they also give you several other tools inside of it. So there's goals, there's docs, there's goals, there's all sorts of things. So it's a great tool for managing tasks, but also automating some of the things that you don't want to have to do every week.
The other thing that it's great about is if you want someone to almost become dictatorial in your company about what platforms you are and are not allowed to use, you should definitely check out ClickUp. Carlton,
just low blows.
Just kidding. I am not a good technology customer in general, so Carlton's had to spend countless hours teaching me how to just like log into basic stuff, and ClickUp has made everything super easy. So, but just had to bother him about that. My have you heard is not necessarily a tool or something that will help you, with your messaging or anything like that, but just a good example really of someone who is executing on what we're talking about, the premise that we're talking about. So it's a guy named Henry Belcaster. I talked about him on Twitter earlier this week, and he is someone who in some ways probably competes with us. I'm probably like doing bad business by even talking about him. I think they do. I don't know if they do production work, but they definitely like splice up assets after people have created podcasts and videos and things like that. And what I think this guy has done so well, if you want to look him up, his name is Henry Bell, Bel Caster, Caster, specifically on YouTube. He publishes daily, which is, I can't even imagine in terms of just the effort that's needed there. And they're usually like 3 to 5 minute videos. And they're not overly educational. They're probably a little bit more entertaining, vlog style, but he's super consistent. I mean, he very rarely misses even a day. He tells stories very concisely. So he tells it in that 3 to 5 minute window. And 3 minutes is tight if you've ever done video. And the third thing is he does a really good job with character development. So if you watch any of his videos, you'll see whether it's his, I don't even really know, but his employees or his partners or teammates or friends, his dad, like he brings them in a compelling way. And the reason that I appreciate that is because so often people get caught up in like, do I have the personality? Do we need to hire actors? Like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make, I mean, he's done a great job of taking very normal people and weaving their story into what he's trying to create. So just a super simple example, but I shout out Henry. I think you're doing a great job.
We need to see if Henry uses ClickUp.
Yeah, maybe we'll have Henry on one of these times, and you can yell at him for whatever project management software he uses. Awesome. Well, hopefully this was helpful. We are going to continue next week with Eric Dodds, who's the head of growth from RudderStack. He's going to be talking about how to align your team for growth. We have a ton of great guests coming. Nicole Warschauer is from Trusted Health is going to help us talk about building community. Tony Miller from A Quick Time Out is going to talk about how to just start creating. So many of you are paralyzed with fear, not sure where to begin. Mickey Cloud, who's the senior vice president of Sasha Group, which is VaynerMedia's small business agency. He's coming on to talk about creative that closes the deal. And then Kenneth Burke from a startup called Text Request is going to talk to us about building culture. So if any of that sounds interesting, please be sure to subscribe, share out the show, and we'll see you next week.